How is that different? How is that better? How is that worse? How is that different? How is that more fulfilling?
Yeah, so I'm just going to really quick, I'll take that question, but I just wanted to welcome everybody back to the Canyon 360 Labs. Everyone says that we are good to go and it looks great on their end. So I guess the good part is we are going to talk a little longer. So it's a great question, Dan. You know, when you're doing a solo effort like that, and it's a first ever effort. So that was one thing interesting about the Impossible Hill Climb is it was a first. No one had ever done the route successfully. It was a sink or swim, and anything we did, honestly, in my mind, was a success in that we made it. But I heavily wanted to make it. When you're racing, it's more of a you versus the competitors. There is a little bit of room, but it's definitely not like you can get last place and still feel proud of it. So I can get last place on an expedition and still feel pretty proud of it. Or I can have a really amazing effort and also be proud of it. So they're very different concepts. But I think when you reach out and you pioneer something that other people can go and try and do, that's sharing the sport. And I think Lionel's got an incredible ability to share the sport, in the way that he brings his people into the sport of triathlon. And I think that Sarah also is very good at bringing people in to the sport of triathlon, and and she's very entertaining, and so I think that's one of those wonderful things, and everybody's kind of got their strength, but that's I would say the big difference is there's no last place when you do something to finish.
To answer your question, Dan, from my perspective, I would agree that it has a very different complexion. When you're doing a race with, let's say, 60 other pros on the start line, you can sort of hide in there and get lost in the if you have a bad race, you can sort of hide in that. And when you're doing something solo, that was a component of this 1 hour thing, is I really wanted to have it live streamed because I wanted to keep myself extremely accountable. And know that you have no out now, and that makes me really nervous, and it gives me it gives the whole thing an entirely different complexion. It's truly just a personal challenge, and now I've really dug myself a hole because I have no out, and so put your money where your mouth is, and you took this on to push yourself to the absolute limit. We're going to find out a true FTP test. And you're gonna and as well with regards to the 1 hour thing, and why I chose that challenge is because it's extremely standardized as well. We could do a KOM. Sam Long and I got into this KOM battle back in, which was both each time's a personal challenge, but it has a very different complexion because winds and temperature and all these things just change it. It's not apples to apples day to day. Head to head would be a different story, but. The 1 hour thing, though, is very, very standardized, as I'm learning with all the UCI rules and everything. And it has to be done on a 250-meter track, and you can't use power or any feedback. And so you're going to find out where you stand in the world of time trialing, really. And as well, like I said, with the live stream and everything, I mean, there's nowhere to hide. And so I actually asked the UCI official if I crashed, because they put these things, these yellow things, so you can't cut the course all the way around right on the perimeter of the track. And I've been riding fine, and every now and then I'll hit the blue, right, of the thing. It's nice wood, and then there's the blue infield. And so you can't really hit the blue at all, and if you do for too long, you will hit these sandbags and crash. And so I asked them, just in case it happens, because it's a lot of money to do all this stuff, I'm like, if I crash, can I restart? The gun goes over again. He's like, yeah, it's your time. I mean, you got the track booked. We got to restart you from the blocks and everything. So, I mean, all this stuff is it's a totally different complexion than we're used to. Yeah. And it would never have happened if I would never have gotten this opportunity to feel these new feelings without this whole thing. So I guess there is it's been a crappy year from a racing standpoint, but I think with a good attitude and right perspective, I mean, for me, I've really enjoyed this year. Actually, I think this is gonna go down as a very, very interesting year.
Yeah, it's very internal versus external, where you're focusing on other people's facing and things. What about you, Sarah? What do you think? How does an individual effort, like a test effort or a race simulation or a FKT, differ from when you line up and you're trying to chase down a rival?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, I haven't really done stuff on the individual level. Like, I've always raced against other people, but I think sometimes when I'm racing, I draw on some of the stuff that I've sort of experienced in the work environment, which a lot of people on this call maybe have experienced themselves. Like, you're doing a management presentation, or you've got, like, eyes are on you, right? So I imagine it's the same as what Lionel's sort of contemplating right now. It's that if someone asks you a question, you've got to know the answer. There's no one backing you up. So when you're like presenting a company to potential investors or something like this, you're under quite a lot of pressure to know what you're talking about. And so I often draw on those skills learned in like the workplace. And I think, Lionel, you'll have this opportunity. It'll take a lot of pressure off when you're actually racing, because the eyes aren't only on you then. And that's why I take that into racing a lot. It's that you only put pressure on yourself. And so when you're in an environment with lots of other people, you can draw on that experience of feeling completely under the pump and under the thumb to then help you sort of focus on what you need to do in that racing environment. So yeah, I guess for me, it's not specific to this year, but it's definitely something that, that work experience like helps me transfer over into racing.
Mm-hmm. It's a good one.
Can I just say that Lionel's use of the word accountable, in my 40 years in triathlon, where I've seen and known virtually all the I don't know them all now, there's just so many around the world, but for the first probably 20 years, I knew everybody and sponsored most of them. And accountability has been the thing that has caused the champions to be champions and has caused those who fall to fall. That is, whether accountability is a strength or whether it's your Achilles heel, whether it's your kryptonite. The expectations that people place on you. Pardon me, I'm not the moderator, Jeremiah, you are, but I'm also fascinated by how people respond to this weight of expectations that gets placed on them.
It can be pretty heavy at times, and when you're doing a big race like World Championships or a big FKT or hour record, I know that it's one of those things where you have to stay focused, but you don't want to be hyper focused as well. And that was a part of why I thought it would be fun to talk about things off the bike, because sometimes before a big race I'll read, and just take a little pressure off. Or I'll just draw an illustration of the track, for example. For a mountain bike course, you have to know all the features, and sometimes that's just a fun way to calm the nerves and stay centered. And the samurai used to do flower arrangements. I mean, these guys were disciplined, human weapons with a sword. I mean, they're warriors. And to counterbalance that aggressive, cutthroat killer instinct, they would do something to balance their day or balance their psyche. And I thought that's one thing that I noticed among a lot of top-level athletes. They have something that they can use, whether it be music, art, guitar, to tune out. And so it was kind of joking. We had someone... Bike Som texted in asking if there's golf. He's a California golf pro, and I just put golf up there because it's the polar opposite of some raging, intense action sport.
You haven't seen me golf then, Jeremiah.
Do you golf?
Horrible.
Lionel golfs. Everyone knows that.
Horrible golfer. I see. That's funny that you say that. I have to say, because I get way more stressed out playing golf than I do. I got into golf because it was supposed to relax me, and it has done the complete opposite. I need a week break after a round of golf.
Please do a YouTube on the golf I want to see you like
You
smashing
don't
the
want to
golf
see
cart.
me. You don't want to see me play golf. Trust me.
Are you a speed golfer or just a golfer?
No, I'm the opposite of speed golf because I take so many shots.
Oh man.
I wish I was.
And Kyle McCann asks if Sarah is really into knitting.
Me knitting? Oh no.
I bet you'd be good at
I
it.
can sew.
Yeah.
I can sew to repair things, but I can't knit.
That's about the extent of it. I only sew things if I crash and it's a really nice skin suit I like. Yeah. So if anybody out there in the audience wants to type in a question, we can answer those questions as they come up on the fly. Dan, I think there's, from the outside looking in, there's a really interesting pivot in triathlon, or at least development in triathlon with the PTO. I know we talked about this, but I was just reading about it because, it seems like a really a good bit of new energy coming into the sport. It always takes like sometimes outside forces to break up the stagnation in the sport. What's your kind of take on this organization, the development of some high level prize events, and inclusion of the pros as owners?
When I started Slow Twitch, which was about 21 years ago, one of the first things, a piece of content I wrote was a feature called something like to form a more perfect union, something like that. And it was the 20-year history of failures of professional athletes to professional triathletes to form a union or something like a union, or whatever you want, associate, whatever you want to call it.
A group.
And so little did I know it would take another 20 years for this thing to finally get off the ground. And so I'm glad to see it. If you look at if you look at basketball, if you look at tennis, if you look at golf, you really aren't going to get to the next level as a sport until the athletes are able to really inject their talents and their wishes and their insight and their instincts into the development of the sport. You can't just be a sport where a bunch of old white men in blue blazers are walking around making all the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I'm old enough to have seen the transformation of this. When I started as a competitive runner in 1970, entering high school, you had to have an AAU card in order to do a road race, and a big road race was 300 people. And it wasn't until Steve Prefontaines and people of that nature basically gave the finger to the guys in the blue blazers. And so the PTO isn't exactly anybody giving the finger to guys in blue blazers, but it amounts, whatever good came out of throwing over the AAU. And when tennis players and basketball players got to this, I'm betraying my politics a little, but I'm so proud of the NBA and the WNBA in what they've been able to achieve this year. And so the only thing I want for the PTO is the next phase for the PTO is to do what the NBA did and to start to talk about things other than, in other words, Lionel should be able to do more than shut up and dribble. And so there's that component too. And I'm looking forward to that. And so we're going to watch, all of us are watching, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about what it's going to become. But I'm glad it's finally here after 40 years.
Do you guys have any commentary from what little bit you know, or, well, a little bit I know? You know a lot more than I do, but I think it's at least, the change is definitely the first, piece of it that I see as positive. A triathlon fan. I am not a high-level triathlete, so that's why I want to get Sarah's input, Lionel's input. What do you guys think about this thing?
I think it's interesting because at the start it looked like an insurmountable task. Like it looked like another, I guess, round of here's a stack of, I guess, invested funds into triathlon, perhaps that goes to a certain few. Maybe we'll try and be inclusive of everyone, but I guess there still was Ironman was very strong, and for PTO to overcome that, it'd be really difficult. But I guess looking at it from a holistic perspective, that sometimes opportunity comes through obscurity, and I think this year is maybe the opportunity for the PTO. And actually, even though it's more difficult for athletes to race, the fact that they've kind of stuck to their word and supported everyone this year, and then also kept gone to all lengths to keep this Daytona going ahead, I think is kind of going to give everybody the reassurance that it's here for the long haul. And I think that can't be a bad thing. I think in the long run, I guess going into next year, it's going to be interesting to see what that eventuates, like what races do come out of this period of time. But I think this period of COVID, although it's been terrible for the athletes, I think perhaps it might be the best thing that's happened to us in the long run, because the PTO can then make a stand, and we'll see what happens.
Lionel, what are your inputs on this thing?
I think to answer Dan's question or observation of why it took another 20 years, well, first off, I'd answer that, I mean, we're not finished yet. The work has just begun, really. And I think the big one is the business model, right? It's like why it's taken 20 years. Well, professional triathletes, we've been kind of like hinged on, you have to go to an Ironman race, and that's your only source of exposure. And the Kona broadcast on Sunday afternoon one day in December is like the only real large quantity of exposure we ever get. And so we're kind of like, what's the business model here for us? And I think that's been the big problem is, what can we do to provide, larger value that would bring on big sponsors and that sort of thing, and allow us to actually have more bargaining power? Because the reality is, you talk about these other organizations, there is no money coming in for the NBA, the WNBA, without the athletes. But in our industry, all the money is coming in. Not really. I'm a true believer in pros, that pros are, we get it out there. We legitimize it, these sort of things. We inspire people. But, the powers that be can make an argument that, well, all that relies on us. And so I don't think we've ever really had the opportunity. But fast forward 20 years or so, now you see it. We have massive opportunities through YouTube, through all these different methods. And now I think it's becoming, once again, there's a lot of work to be done, but I can see a business model where, and it's going to come through. I think the beginning, there's going to be growing pains, of course, but with Daytona and with the Collins Cup, you see a business model here starting to flourish of, there's a very interesting, this is going to be a very high profile race. It's going to be very interesting. There's going to be a lot of media hype going into it, as there already is. It's going to be a great race, hopefully a great production. And then you can start to see that, hey, maybe there is a bit of a business model outside of just we show up at Kona in October and race. And I think it's much more encompassing than just the racing. I think, as you see, the UFC is a great model. They do excellent work. Like, you love these athletes. You know a lot about these athletes. You know what they're doing. And so when they go and they fight, you are rooting for somebody because you know so much about their backstory. And that's something that in the past, I don't really even know if there was much of an opportunity up until fairly recently to have that level of exposure through our own methods,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, super fragmented, right? Like you have to do it all yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to me the business model of PTO that can work is organizing us and helping us to get our message. Because I believe triathlon and triathletes are very interesting and have lots of interesting perspectives. And Sarah, yours of being in finance, is a very relatable perspective that I believe you should talk about more and stuff, because it's very interesting. And we just never have had platforms to talk about these things and for people to relate and to get inspired and that sort of thing. So I think now's the time, and if we do it right, we can do it.
But Lionel, don't you think you are the poster child, the person who's just done it anyway?
But it's a byproduct of the modern of what we have in front of us, you know what I mean? And so now it's here. It wasn't there even 10 years ago. I look at my YouTube channel, and it joined in 2011. So Craig Alexander, these guys, I mean, they didn't have such a great opportunity that we have now. We have so much more opportunity now than guys 10 years ago or even 20 years ago. I mean, I think it's much more realistic, because you keep using these models. Oh, look at tennis. But it's like, guys, people are paying a lot of money to go see the U.S. Open. I mean, it's a bit, you take away the tennis players, there's no one paying to go see the U.S. Open. Our business model needs to be much different than tennis. And that's what we need to hash out. And I believe that's what we will do with the PTO, is hash out, how can we get some sponsors? How can we start to generate some cash flow and that sort of thing, so that we actually have a bona fide business? That's the reality. PGA Tour, it's a business, you know what I mean? The people are willing to put big sponsorship dollars up, but their business model is much different. It's on TV and lots of people are watching it. We need to have similar, but it's going to be through different channels, in my opinion.
Well, I just want this just a little tiny bit of pushback.
Sure.
You're right. You're absolutely right in everything you say. But to go back and recap a little of the earlier parts of this this live stream, you're out there doing the hour record this week. Jeremiah, who's in the, and I can only say this because I'm a lot older than Jeremiah, but he's in the backside of his career.
Totally. You can go
so
there.
Jeremiah's there riding for 12 hours around the ring in Northern Virginia, and he's doing a climb. I mean, I've done almost all of that climb you did. I just did it on several days up Mauna Kea, and that kind of stuff is really what puts flesh on the bones of athletes and makes them marketable. So for everything that the PTO can and should and will do, I look at just the people who are on this call right now as people who have said, you know, PTO is great, but I must also take on the initiative myself, and which is what the people on this call have done. And so I just want to salute you guys and say, you know, and this kind of goes back to Lionel's use of the word accountability. Lionel, like on your gravestone when you die, I hope accountable is on there somewhere.
I hope his record time is on there.
Yeah, that too.
Dan, and I agree with you, and I agree exactly with what you said about how accountability can be both the creator and the destruction of champions. Because when I look back at my life and my career, when I had my best times, it was when I was most accountable. And so when I have my worst times, it's when, like, if just to give my own personal story, it's in 2000, after 2017, I split with my coach, David Tilbury Davis, and I became extremely less accountable. And I'm going off on all these tangents with no one, you know, giving me guidance as to what are you doing, guy? And I would say those are my two worst years in 2018 and 19, and I didn't really have much accountability.
Yeah, I think
my favorite Lionel is the accountable, humble Lionel. And when I mean humble, I mean when you go back to David, that took some humility. But it was also it was the accountable, humble, insightful Lionel that brought Lionel back to the forefront of the sport.
Ironman will do that to you.
Well, it's definitely. I think, you know, this whole period, you know, we'll look at it as a time in which athletes take the steering wheel and will guide their careers. And sometimes these sort of adverse points are opportunities, really. You look at the opportunity for Lionel to do something he normally wouldn't do. Several of the things I've done this year, I would never have done. And I think, you know, when we look at the future of triathlon, we've got these opportunities that have come out of all this shuffle that's taking place. So I'm excited to see athletes, you know, taking more stake in their sport. Always. I always wish that we saw that more on the mountain bike side. But mountain bikers and triathletes have something in common. They're very soloist, individualistic athletes. You know, their team mentality is not their strongest point. They want to go and compete. So I think when we look at the potential's there, but everybody needs to really make what they want to see happen with it. And PTO, if they're out there listening, it's definitely by making the athletes and uplifting the athletes and highlighting their character, I think that we've got some incredible, very interesting people in triathlon, and now that I've looked into the sport more, it's made me a fan of it, fan of the people, fan of the training, the things that they do, and the things that make them different and unique. So Sarah, what do you think as far as races coming up on your horizon? I know you are not in Utah by chance.
Yeah, so this year's been really challenging for me personally. I've had a few personal things, and I've also had an injury. So for me, over the last, so Cairns, talking about accountability and expectations and all of those things, I think, I think that's when you're most stressed out, is when you're not ready for something. Like I go to Hawaiian Ironman and I'm ready to race ordinarily, but maybe some of these last couple of races for me have been more stressful than any in my career, because I haven't had what I've normally had going into them. However, this year is obviously a different year, and so for me, I guess that took some pressure off the result or whatnot. It's like it was almost a celebration just to be able to race Cairns and Mooloolaba. We're very lucky in Queensland not to have had a lot of cases, and so our races were just went ahead, albeit with a very small field. So I guess for me, it delayed what I wanted to do during the year, and that is to come to the US, because I love it here. And we're actually not allowed to leave Australia. I got a specific exemption to be able to travel out of the country to be able to race, which the PTO assisted with, which is amazing. And so, yeah, I'm here to train. I'm in Park City, Utah, so I'm here to train at altitude. It's very cold compared to normal at the moment, but the temperature's dropping rapidly. But yeah, we've traveled here so that I can spend some time at altitude and also just be isolated for a little bit and just get my head back in the right place in the last lead up before heading over to Florida. And then after that, I'm not sure. If I head back to Australia, it's quarantine for 2 weeks. So I'm very curious to see what races are supported by the PTO going forward. Perhaps I'll stay in the United States. But I guess for now, next year is still challenging, right? Like we don't know what's on the calendar. And I guess it leaves us in a position where, do you train at this sort of moderate level and then sort of try and do these 8-week sort of peaks for races, or do you shut down and have a rest? It's a really hard consideration. And it's just constant reassessment all the time of what the calendar's going to look like. So for now, I guess it's getting to Daytona. I think it's and the amount of people have been messaging saying, "Are you going?" And that's from sort of age group athletes as well. They just want to have the opportunity to participate in an event. So I think it's going to be a big show.
I think so too. It seems to be a lot of interest just in people that I've talked to. That brings up a great point. You were talking about the preparation for December, a very high-level race in December. I know that in a typical year, by this time of year, I'm completely toast. I try to race cyclocross for 4 weeks, and then it's just not happening. But I think this year's a little different, and there's a little bit more of a moderate, steady training. Lionel, where would you say your training is as far as your are you just full gas into this thing, or are you just getting sharp for it?
Of course, I've been observing everybody and how they've handled this thing. So you seem to have a spectrum of how people have handled it. You got one side of people who've completely just stopped training, and they're like, "Oh, I'll just pick it back up when we have definite races." And then the other one, and I've tried to be in the middle, but I think I went more to the other extreme. And you got the other one who's just trying to maintain fitness and that sort of thing. And then you've got the other extreme who's doing massive challenges and in the best shape of their life and that sort of thing. And I tried to be the middle guy. And unfortunately my personality, I started doing, 20 weeks of 70K run weeks. And I was doing these massive Zwift efforts and massive KOMs and stuff, and then I started to develop a little tendonitis in my knee, and so you're always trying to. This personality is tough to. It's always tough to deal with.
You got to harness the racehorse.
Yeah. So anyways, to answer your question, I was trying to be the middle, and then I developed that tendonitis, so then I had to ease off, and then I was a little bit apathetic in that I was I went to St. George, actually Utah, because I thought St. George Ironman was going to happen. I did a training camp there for a week, biked the course, all this stuff. And then I was waiting in the States too. Usually I would come home at the end of May. But anyways, I waited there for another 2 months, and then they canceled that race on me. And I was just so apathetic. I was like, whatever, I'm just going home. I said, I need something. And so then I said, I'm going to try and break my 5K PB. And then I signed up for this 1 hour event. And then, so that's what I've been doing. So I'm in probably the best 5K shape and 1 hour bike shape I've ever been in, if that answers your question. I wish, though, of learning the lessons I've learned, seeing as the next couple of races, the big ones, let's say the Daytona and the Collins Cup, they're both very short, and they're going to have the ITU guys. So my advice then for most people, and including myself, would be you need to go back to basics and get as fast as you possibly can. And the beauty of going back to those basics is that it's very low volume, or relatively low volume compared to training for Ironmans. And so, you feel a lot fresher, and then you'll also be getting better at form, be getting better system, all these sorts of things. So if we continue down this very, not knowing what races are going to happen and not happen, then I think I'll just continue to do what I did these last 2 months and just keep trying to improve my 5 and 10K, keep trying to improve my 20, 30, 40-minute bike power. And then, of course, I got to bring the swimming back. That's the challenging part. I have been swimming, but anyways, I still suck at it. So
Okay. I wouldn't say you suck at it. I would say that I am. I am the bar.
All my peers would say that. So.
Well, hey.
I guess another thing to consider is like, well, there is no world. I mean, I guess is now Daytona the world championship? It's like a brain, like sort of, when will be the next world championship? Do we need to be in the best form of our lives right now in December, going forward into the future? Will this be the race? And if someone else is super fit right now, can they maintain that until Hawaii next year? Will they need a break, or will they get injured in between? It's like, it's a really challenging thing to think about, because to carry the momentum for so much longer is really, really a difficult challenge for a coach and the athlete. So I guess, it's like a slow build up, and then maybe things return to a bit more normality in the back end of next year, but we don't know that. And it's never, I think.
I had a question for Sarah, which goes back to this statement that you made of, how is it that athletes are supposed to approach a year like this, and do you sort of have a stasis training plan and then an 8-week build-up? And the two questions I had, and which are kind of related, is what does the stasis plan look like mileage-wise? Because to me, 8 weeks seems like a long haul to get ready for a race, although it's just different for different athletes depending on how quickly you respond to training input. But the lower your level of stasis training, the more time you need, the higher your level of stasis. Like if you're Lionel and all you have is an on-off switch and there's no throttle adjustment, then you don't need 8 weeks. I would not think.
Totally. The technical is the CTL that you're at. If you're like, a high volume athlete already, you can kind of be in that holding pattern and say, whoa, in 3 weeks I want to, snap to.
I was wondering, so what does your stasis look like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's things like having a once a week full day off, and then just some regular sessions during the week, long ride, long run, whatever. But they're certainly not doing things like 5-hour rides. It would have been back when we were in the sort of COVID period. It was doing when we were in lockdown in Australia, it was doing things like 3-hour ride, 90-minute run. I guess swimming, we tried to swim as much as possible. We had access to open water where I was in Noosa, which was pretty good. But a lot of people couldn't swim. So I guess from a volume perspective, it would be maybe 70% of volume, perhaps, maybe like 250 Ks on the bike and 50 to 60 Ks of running, and trying to do 15 Ks of swimming. And then, I guess for me, the way I build into an Ironman is we have certain sessions that we try. I use the Trisato methodology, and we have like sort of maybe certain types of sessions that we need to achieve, and we try and do those a couple of times and then there's the race prep period. So for me, I like to have a couple of 17-day blocks, and then like a 10 to 12 day block leading into the race.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it looks like 8 weeks for me. But yeah, I mean, this time for example, for Cairns, I I wasn't even running 10 weeks. I only started running 10 weeks before the Cairns Ironman, and which was a good thing for me, because in the end I lifted my swim by doing a huge swim block. But yeah, I guess, it was kind of not what we'd planned for anyway. After all of that, so doing this nice little block of like continuous training and enjoying your social life and having a day off a week and all this sort of stuff, and then I ended up just injuring myself anyway, and so I guess yeah, I mean, it wasn't the perfect preparation, but had it gone to plan, I think that would have worked out just fine.
In the 8-week block, how many days do you go before you take a day off?
Yeah, so it's like 17 or so days.
Wow.
And in that 17 days, there'll be a day where it's just a big swim.
Is that the day off?
No, that's not the day off, but it's a semi-day off, I guess. We'll do like 7K swim and then the rest of the day off, maybe. But yeah, I guess it's two blocks of that, and then a sort of a specific, maybe 11-day will build up into the race. So it kind of takes 8 weeks. Yeah.
So is the 8 weeks including the taper?
Yeah.
Okay, that helps. I thought you were just 8 weeks.
It's not really a taper. It's just a prep period of like 10. We don't really taper. I mean, I'll still ride. Even say, for example, before like the Hawaiian Ironman, we still ride maybe, I think it's on the Tuesday, the Monday or the Tuesday, we still ride 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good amount. Well, I have a couple questions that are coming in the live chat. RSJRV99 asks, will a Challenge Daytona type venue with a closed course circuit loop be a new form of triathlon racing, allowing it to be easier to spectate with greater emphasis on speed and biomechanics as opposed to technical ability? I'm not sure about that last part of the question, but what do you think, Lionel? Do you think it's going to be easier to spectate? Do you think it's going to be the birth of a new format?
I mean, I don't have enough history knowledge to know what's been around prior, but for as long as I've been in, absolutely. I mean, this is going to be Challenge Samarin was probably the closest thing that I had experienced, and the bike wasn't on the course, but the swim was right in the, and so you could spectate the whole swim, and then the run was 3 loops inside of like a horse like training area, so you could spectate the whole thing. It was like cameras, big jumbo screens, and then it was live streamed. So obviously Daytona has amazing ability to do events just with their technology from the NASCAR stuff. So absolutely, I do believe that this could, and once again, we're like all in the right place at the right time with the PTO and everything being able to back it a bit, that I do believe if done properly with, athlete kind of input, absolutely. I mean, I see a business model evolving where people would actually want to come and watch this thing if there's some hardcore racing.
Yeah, that's a really exciting potential there, Sarah. What do you think about that format? Do you think it's something new or just a variation?
Well, I guess it's a long course variation of some of the stuff we've seen in the past. I mean, in Australia, we had the St. George series, I think, years ago, where Greg Welsh raced at it, I think, and a few Brad Bevan, etc. And it was kind of like blow up swimming pools and everything else. And I guess that maybe changed, I guess. I mean, we saw the change from sort of, non-drafting to draft legal in the short course triathlon around that sort of time when those kind of events were being held. And I guess we sort of saw maybe Super League ran a race recently where it was kind of like it as well. And I guess with COVID and everything else, maybe it will be, I mean, who knows? There's other venues around the world, I guess, with racing tracks and motor racing tracks, and it's possible that, it could sort of be another change that we'll see in the sport, which will also change the athletes. So we saw that in when it went from non-drafting to draft legal, you sort of, the type of athlete that was really good, maybe with strong biking and that sort of thing, maybe more runners came through in short course triathlon over the next 10 years after that. So maybe it will change what the the top level athlete looks like and what things physically are good for performing well. So yeah, I don't know, it could be a big change.
Well, I think it's pretty interesting, and Dan, you've seen it from the beginning, and traveling internationally, at least with mountain bike racing, stage racing. One of the fun things about traveling is you see different formats. Stage racing is really popular in South Africa. Short track, which is now part of the World Championships and World Cups rather, started in the U.S. and no one did it in Europe for a while, and then it kind of became adopted. What do you think about this format and sort of this possibility that it might change things up a little?
Well, I think it's great that I have never really considered myself a triathlete. I consider myself a multi-sport athlete, and always have. When I named Slow Twitch, it's because I really felt like I was, I didn't want to be fenced into try something. And so when our sport branches out and does different kinds of things. I mean, gravel is huge among slow twitchers. And it's because slow twitchers aren't just triathletes, they're multi-sport athletes. And so when a Sarah Crowley or Lionel Sanders or Mark Allen or whoever says, I'm just going to go off and do this other race, this other kind of race, you take these skills, these life skills, these primal skills, swim, bike, run, you repackage them into compelling events. Whether it's an FKT on something you do by yourself or whether it's a new race format. I am just not, I put on my first race in 1981, 6 months after I finished the Hawaiian Ironman, because I wanted to bring that back, something like that back. Yeah. Right, but the swim was at the end.
Cool.
And 4 of the first 5 triathlons I did were draft legal, going back to the 1970s. So for the people in my community who for whom draft legal is a religious issue, it's like I remind them of that. So I'm any kind of format, any cross country skiing, horseback, I don't care.
Yeah.
As long as you're traversing the planet under human-powered locomotion. Although in the case of horses, I guess it's horsepower. But
or in the case of Lionel, it's 0.5 horsepower.
There you go. So there is no kind of format that and I think that's part of triathlon's DNA. Is we do new things, we try new things, and Lionel, who is in his best 5K, 50K run, bike, shape of his life, has just trained himself for a short course triathlon. So I'm eager to see it. The swim might be painful, but
it always
but
is.
Otherwise, yeah.
Well,
I mean, Lionel just made himself a better athlete because of this horrible year of 2020 and what he's done in response to that, training wise. So I'm always excited to see Lionel try stuff that isn't in his wheelhouse, because it's always entertaining and it's usually successful.
Awesome. Well, I think that takes us to one of the very few questions I had left, and then we can hit some of the sort of comment thread questions. But if you guys were to do another sport, what would it be? Lionel.
I say it. I don't know if I have the courage to do it, but I like fighting. So I think I would have tried it anyway. I probably got my beat up and quit early, but I think I would. I think I would have gotten into MMA. I think I would have tried that. Yeah.
Awesome. And what about you, Sarah? MMA?
Can I be right? Is it right if I'm actually left-handed, but can I be right-handed and do the sport that I? So. I used to play softball, but I was really limited and the reason I actually went to a sport where as individual was because I kept getting, I guess, discriminated against because of my left-handedness. I could only play first or right field. So if I could be right-handed, I'd like to play softball.
Wow.
Just so I could play a better infield position. Yeah.
Man, totally unexpected. Wow, that was the whole point of this. It's very eye-opening. No, it's super cool. Talbot Cox has a question. Who do you look to impress the most in your life right now? Spouse, parents, friends? Lionel?
Talbot, you got to come out with these are odd, semi-philosophical type question. I mean,
you should see his other ones. Right, I'm not even going to post the rest of them up.
The right answer is I'm not really trying to impress anyone. I mean, I enjoy challenge, and if you put unnecessary pressure, like you're trying to impress someone and stuff, I mean, it's just unnecessary pressure on yourself. I mean, I enjoy this. I believe I was given a gift to be exposed to this sport, to these great people, and I just want to push myself and find what I can do. And even when my professional career is over, I intend to continue to do this for the rest of my life in various other, hopefully, forms of activity. But I will also, do it with my mind too, if for whatever reason my body can't do it. So
yeah.
Sorry, Talbot. That's my answer for you.
I love it, Sarah.
Oh, I like to impress Talbot.
That was the other answer.
Yeah. No, I think I guess you should be doing it for yourself. So I guess for me, my best sessions and things that I do are when I sort of quietly surprise myself sometimes, and that's when I think I feel you feel the best, you get the best out of things. So I guess for me to get to a level of fitness where I'm having some of those sessions where you sort of, oh wow, I did that, or you get the most out of those days. And so I guess going forward in the next, and they're harder to find when you don't have a race to train for and you're not like pushing your boundaries and your limits as much. So I think I guess Lionel, with what you're doing, I think it's a great opportunity for you to have those feelings of like, wow, I surprised myself with this or whatever. And for me to get back to that kind of level at the moment and get some solid training done where I sort of quietly surprise myself, I think is some of the best feelings you can get from sport.
Oh yeah, I love those days, like when it just clicks and you just have been sore and nothing's working, and then one day you're just, bam! It's like a home run. It's something special about it when it all just happens. We've got a great question from Abdallah and Imam. What's your advice for a 34-year-old beginner who's just fallen in love with the sport, and to newcomers and the sport in general? Lionel?
Just enjoy the journey. I mean, don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself. Learn how you like to learn. Like, you want to learn it your own way, go ahead. You know what I mean? You learn from YouTube videos and stuff. You're going to make mistakes, no problem. Enjoy that process. If you're the other type of athlete, you want to have a coach, you want to have input, you want to get serious and that sort of thing, do it in that fashion. Just enjoy the journey and soak it all in. And there's going to be good days, bad days. But I mean, it's all just good lessons. And I believe if you have the right perspective, even though they're sporting lessons, you will be able to take those lessons throughout your entire life.
Dan, what do you have to say for our beginners out there?
Well, I think the reason all three of you are still here, and you've all had the opportunity to fall off the cliff because you put too much pressure on yourself, and you feel like you're racing for someone else or something else. The reason why you're all still here, you guys have said it yourself. The best way to be in this sport long haul, whether you're an age grouper, beginner, pro, whatever, is please yourself. Be selfish. Do it for yourself. You're not racing for your sponsors. You're not racing for your family. You're not racing for your friends. You're not racing for the fans. You're pleasing yourself. You're doing this for yourself. And if you take that opportunity, sort of a good selfishness, a healthy selfishness, if that's your approach, you will be like me. The one thing I have that you don't all have is 50 years of this. And I, when people say, well, you need to run with this technique, or you need to eat, you need to drink, he's all fine. When you have been running for 50 years, then I will listen to you, because that's where I am right now. And so I was so heartened to hear what Lionel said, which is when he's over as a professional, he ain't stopping. He's still going. And you look at triathlon versus other sports. You look at the Mark Allens and the Dave Scotts and the Scott Tinleys and everyone else. Everyone else. We don't have obese ex-pros in our sport. We have people who they're in for life. It's a lifetime contagion. But that's because you do what you do for you. And if I was still sponsoring people, if I was sponsoring Sarah Crowley, I would say, Sarah, do not care about me. Just care that my check's clear. You race for you. Do not. I'm a big boy. I'll take care of myself as your sponsor. You race for you. And that's what I would say to anybody, regardless of where they are in the beginning, middle, end, wherever they are on the talent spectrum of the sport. That would be my advice.
Love it. Love it. Well, there's another question from Joe. Is there anything particular you guys are looking forward to or would like to see happen next year?
Oh, I'd love to see a calendar.
That's not empty.
Yeah, amen to that one. Some consistency in the calendar. You know, this year was definitely like everything's going to be back to normal in June or whatever. And, you know, yeah, for sure the consistency. Lionel, anything in particular?
I'd like to see Sam Long come back to Tucson and him and I go head to head, go up Mount Lemmon, KOM.
Draft or no draft?
No, non-drafting. Stagger.
Oh, okay.
Stagger rule.
Okay.
No. Draft legal.
Yeah.
I love your rivalry, Lionel. I think it's good. I think I need to start one. I don't know. Maybe I'll
just start one. There isn't actually a rivalry. You're just making it up.
I should make
a rivalry.
Heather.
I think it's great.
Slow Twitchers loved Lionel versus Sam up Mount Lemmon. They loved that.
I couldn't help to tune in. Anytime you get like some, sparring partner, buddy thing going on, I love it. So what about in regards to, races for next year? Obviously we're going to have to see which ones are on, but which one are you looking forward to coming back the most for next season?
I think I'm looking forward to Roth. I love that race. I think it's such a good celebration of triathlon, and I've only experienced it once, and I was really looking forward to going again this year. So, and then also I guess the Collins Cup, of course, because it's going to be new. So, hopefully those two stay in the schedule, and Hawaii, of course.
Yeah. I too want to go back to Hawaii. I mean, maybe this is going to improve my chances greatly, by the way. Well, it's been awesome having you guys on board today, and I think we've had touched on beginners, we touched on PTO, we've touched on that Lionel actually plays golf. It was totally joking when I put that up there, but hey, that's part of what having a beginner like me pull people into the sport of triathlon. You guys encouraging people to get stoked on triathlon, to try it, to tune in. I'm actually really excited, and I hope I can bring the Canyon Sprinter down to Daytona. I'm on the East Coast, so I'll have my lawn chair up on top and just watch you guys with the binoculars. It's going to be sick. I think it'll be super, super fun. But thank you so much for having the time, or putting the time aside for the broadcast today, and really look forward to following up with you guys. And it's been a real pleasure having you on board today.
Thanks for having us.
And make sure to tune in to Canyon 360 Labs next Friday. And in the meantime, sign up for the Canyon DIY Try. So if you just Google Canyon DIY Try, it'll take you right to the registration page where you can go and just get out there, get active, do a try of any distance on October 24th for a chance to win a Canyon SpeedMax 7.0, and then use the hashtag Canyon DIY Try in social, and then we'll send you out hat, swag, plenty of other fun little things. We got these swag packs, so it's going to be super fun, and thanks for joining in today, guys.
Thanks a lot.
See ya.